Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Mission Oriented Podcast. My guest today, a Navy veteran, a fellow VMI graduate, which makes me very happy, and a serial entrepreneur. Joe Swider is here with me today. Joe, welcome to the program. Thanks for being here.
Bob, thank you. Thank you very much. Glad to be here as well.
So we're going to talk about Terravive in just a minute, a very interesting company doing some really radical stuff. But first, we're going to do the lightning round with Joe Swider. Joe, are you ready for the lightning round?
Sure. Bring it on, Bob.
Okay. So you were a naval surface warfare officer back in the day, but now you have to pick a different branch of the service and a different specialty, military officer, MOS. Okay. So what branch of the service, not the Navy, and what would your job be if you had to do it over again?
Oh, good one. Speaking about catching people off guard.
Well, it's a lightning round, Joe. You got to hurry up.
I guess Army Special Forces.
Army Special Forces. Okay. All right. Second question. What do you think is the single most significant life lesson that you gained from your time in the military?
The world's a big place. I was fortunate whenever I was in, I hit about 48 different ports in 24 countries. You get a very good perspective on how other cultures think. And you realize we're not so, we're very isolated, and it continues to give me a very good perspective on world events and life.
Great answer. All right, third and final question. This is the trivia round, okay? What is a little known fact or skill that Joe Swider has that most people don't know about?
Oh. Probably that I'm very good at pottery, and I'm very good at art.
Ah, okay. A sculptor or a throwing pots, spinning wheels?
That, from ever since I was a kid to just art and drawing. So it's the artistic side that balances out the engineering side.
See, I learn more about my guests in the lightning round. That's why it's fun. So thanks for participating in the lightning round. That's Joe Swider with Terravive. Okay, Joe, let's jump into this now. Before we kind of get into the business that you're in, and folks, this is very interesting because you guys have basically come up with a substitute for plastics in the packaging industry, and it just might be, it's certainly groundbreaking. It might be earth shattering. It's really a meaningful thing that you guys are doing. But before we get into that, you had a little bit of time in the Navy. And I always like to ask my veteran guests, how did you end up choosing the Navy? What was the young 18-year-old maybe thinking not so many years ago, but that led you down that path?
Yeah, no, thank you. I would say whenever I was in high school, I was very patriotic, and I was actually leaning towards enlisting in the military. And my mom said, "Nope, you're going to college." And I said, "Enlisted." She goes, "College." And so the marriage there was VMI. And when I was looking at the services, I knew I wanted to go technical major. So I was a mechanical engineer, but I really didn't know which service to go into. And whenever I looked at the services, I looked at which service gave me the most options throughout my Navy career and throughout life. And, as you know, Bob, in the Navy, you can go surface, you can go subs, you can fly, you can go Special Forces SEALs, you can go intel, you can go across the board. And I personally don't think any other service really gives you that flexibility. And that's kind of why I went down that path, because it, gave me a lot of flexibility in life, and it's definitely paid off.
You're a surface warfare officer. What kinds of ships did you end up serving on?
The first ship was was an old Adams class destroyer. I think it was commissioned in Vietnam, but as a mechanical engineer, I loved because it had 1,200 psi boilers everywhere. And my captain, my ship, CO Rich Funky, awesome guy. and he was a mechanical engineer. So I spent a lot of time down in the engineering spaces, tracing out steam lines and the like. Then I went to FFG 47, which was the Nicholas Oliver Hazard Perry class. And that went, just the opposite. At that point in time, it had gas turbine engines and the helm, the lee helm, everything was controlled with about, two hands like this. So I primarily did those two ships.
Were you in the Atlantic or the Pacific?
I was in the Atlantic.
In the Atlantic. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
good for you. And so when you got out of the Navy, let's start talking about your business career. I mean, I would describe you as the quintessential serial entrepreneur. I've known you for a number of years. Every time I turn around, you're involved with something new. But when you got out of the Navy, did you jump right into entrepreneurship, or was there a gestation period before that?
Yes. Whenever I first got out, I worked for an environmental laboratory. I think a lot of times, people getting out don't really know what they want to do when they transition out of the military life into civilian. So it was a good job. And then, I took it because it was transitional and the company that I was with wanted to grow. And then I went to another kind of entrepreneurial engineering company. And then from there, I went probably back in '99. I first started the true entrepreneurial route, starting businesses.
So what do you think tipped the scale? I mean, it was the series of events that got you into entrepreneurship. Was this back when you were at the Blacksburg? You were down in Blacksburg. When we ran in down there around Virginia Tech and the airport and the industrial center down there. Seems like my memory's coming back to me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. Great memory. That was the second startup that I did whenever I saw you there. That was Prime Photonics. That was a spinoff out of Virginia Tech. But actually, I actually got the entrepreneurial bug. Entrepreneurship really doesn't run on my side of the family, really. I grew up in Pittsburgh, if you remember. And but I think where it really started was whenever I was a senior in high school, and even freshman year at VMI. My dad worked for a large bank, and he had been there 20 years or so, and he got laid off. And back then you were supposed to be at the same company forever, and he just got laid off. And I saw how devastating that was for him. And I saw that at that point in time, and I said, I'm going to be in control of my own destiny. I'm not going to let anyone completely control what I do in my life. And if I do get knocked down, I'm going to bounce back up. And I saw what happened to my dad, and I said, all throughout VMI and even in the military, I said, at some point in time, I'm going to go down the entrepreneurial path. I'm going to be in control of my own destiny, and I'm just going to blast forward and conquer mountains. And so I would say it went all the way back to high school, senior year in high school.
You reminded me of a quote a friend of mine used to say, the people that leave their jobs and become entrepreneurs, they're exchanging the illusion of security for the illusion of independence. Really, when you work for somebody else, you don't have the security that you think you would have. And it sometimes necessity is the mother of invention. Now, you've been through a number of entrepreneurial businesses. Is there one that was like, the real lesson teaching one? And usually those are the ones that don't turn out so well. Probably had some things that didn't go as well as others, but you look back on them fondly because of, the lessons that were learned. I'm curious. Or have they just all been, home runs? You've got this string of unicorns, right?
No. My philosophy on all this is you should learn from everything. You learn from every failure. You learn from every success. No one really successful has ever just always kept plowing forward with successes. And, if I fail, I'm fine. I learn from it and I apply that lesson next time. And I've always believed that. And then if you get knocked down, like I said, you just kind of jump back up and you look at the next mountain and you take it down. And I would say one of one of the lessons learned was lack of focus by your business partners. I tried to do a company way back when in the early days, and it was with two brothers, and I thought they were full-time putting this thing together. None of us were getting paid, and we were all sacrificing, and I thought they were in it with me. And I find out later that each of them had side gigs pulling in a bunch of money inside consulting. And meanwhile, I'm doing everything for free and for equity and trying to conquer the mountain. So that taught me that if you choose business partners, make sure they are squarely focused on making sure your business that you're married to them with is going to be a success. Because if they get distracted, 9 times out of 10, the companies don't go well, or they don't go as well as they should be.
That's an incredibly important lesson. In my experience, you want to be sure that what's good for your partner is good for you. What's bad for your partner is bad for you. You don't want to be in a situation where something's good for your partner and bad for you, or vice versa. You all want to be in the lifeboat together, so to speak.
Yeah.
And a very important thing. Hey, you're listening to the Mission podcast on the VeteranCrowd Network. My guest is Joe Swider. Joe, let's talk about Terravive. This is a very interesting company. Tell me what Terravive is doing, and then I'm going to pick your brain on it a little bit.
Sure. Yes, Terravive, we manufacture basically biodegradable single-use products. So products that used to be made out of plastic and styrofoam, we do the biodegradable or the compostable versions of them. So think your straws, your cutlery, cups, plates, bowls, takeout containers, Ziploc bags, trash bags, things that you use once that are made out of plastic that are just disposed of. We do the eco-friendly versions of them.
Who discovered this? You've got a partner in this business. Tell us a little bit about how this all came about.
Sure. So Juliana Keeling started the business when she was in college, and actually she went to Washington and Lee. So it's a Lexington story here at Terravive. And she started the business in college, kind of grew it for a couple of years, and then she had the vision. Early on, she was looking at basically biodegradable medical devices, single-use products, and then she toggled to more food service to where we are now. I met her. She was involved with Lighthouse Labs. It's an incubator here in Richmond, and I'm one of a couple dozen people that still read the Richmond Times. So I was reading the Times one day, and I saw her picture there. And I said, oh, that's kind of interesting. It's a materials company. There's all kind of plastic and styrofoam bans coming, across the country and around the world. And I said, this could be an interesting group to tie into and see if I can help them.
I was in Phoenix last week and asked for a straw and couldn't get one.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So you either get that, or you get the paper ones that last about 30 seconds.
Right.
So
all right. So you met her. How long ago was that you guys sort of formed a partnership?
That was a little over 3 years ago.
3 years ago. And so what's happening now? I know that, and we're going to back up on the science of it in a second, but now you're actually making product, and we might already be using some of it and not even know it.
Sure. Yeah. In some locations. So what we have now is where we've grown, COVID, everything, we had to pivot our company in true entrepreneurial fashion. We thought the world looked a certain way whenever she and I joined forces. Then everything shut down, all the universities, all the big box retailers, all the corporate headquarters. So we had to pivot the company, and we started working on some other areas. And then as COVID came back up, all of our markets are open right now. So we're selling across, state governments, commercial clients here in the U.S. as well as internationally. And we have about 16 manufacturing locations in the U.S., and three large warehouses here.
Interesting. All right. So I got to probe the COVID pivot question. So, because this always happens, life happens while you're out trying to do something else, right? So
Yeah.
COVID comes along. Tell us a little bit about the pivot. What were you thinking you were going to do, and what did you have to do?
Sure. So what our business looked like before COVID was we were heavily working with big box retailers, smaller chains, distribution. Think of Cisco, US Foods groups like that, corporate headquarters, universities, stadiums. And so that was the market that we were pursuing before COVID. Juliana had actually attended the Target incubator. So she was on the inside of the Target stores. And so that's what we looked like before COVID. COVID hit, and all of a sudden, all of our clients started shutting down. And so the board met, Juliana and I looked at each other, and within about an hour, we completely pivoted the company, and we started looking at other groups who still needed to eat. So think of like humanitarian organizations or other groups, state efforts were still feeding people. Certain federal programs are still feeding people. So we actually toggled to try to work with some of those clients, and that worked well. And we continued to grow, continued to build out our logistics infrastructure. And then as COVID started to ease up, we started servicing back our old clients who were on the commercial side. So, but
how do you define your addressable market? I mean, it must be enormous, domestically, even internationally. And when I think about places like India and other parts of the world where you just see the rivers full of plastic,
yeah.
So how are you conquering the world here?
We're conquering it one sale at a time, like any true entrepreneur. But it is big. What really drives, certain areas around the world have regulation already in place, and so they're already banning, plastic and styrofoam, plastic food packaging. That's big. France is in the spotlight right now for what they're doing. A lot of areas in the EU have plastic and styrofoam already banned. So having those bans really help. Here in the US, we see some of those bans as well. Certain states have plastic and styrofoam banned, whether it be bags, straws. Styrofoam is a big one coming. There's some other bans coming up for PFAs. If you know Forever Chemicals, it's a cancerous substance found in like firefighting foam and like nonstick pots, but it's also found on the linings of food packaging. I know I think Burger King and McDonald's had a couple lawsuits because what they used to wrap their food in was coated with a PFA. And because it's basically a barrier, it's a film that keeps the grease in place. So, you'll find PFAs in a lot of places that you don't even know about. Even some of our competition puts PFAs on their takeout containers to keep the grease from going through. And so would a market like
California be a right market for your product, or do you want to go to a place like, I don't know, it would strike me that some of these countries don't care, right? Like the ones that are the worst polluters, do they even care, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of efforts, educational, to try to bring other countries, to try to get them to realize how much damage is being done. But to your point, and what I was mentioning before, it really helps if there's bans in place. If the country doesn't care and they don't have any bans in place for plastic and styrofoam waste,
I don't think they have a problem.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of it gets dumped and it makes its way into the oceans. But certain countries are very aware of it. And so we like to target the countries that have the bans in place.
Interesting. So is there, well, now I got a whole bunch of questions. Competition, okay? Obviously one of the competitive things would be paper as an example, coated papers and so forth, but that's a recycling problem. That's got plastic on it, whether people know it or not. But,
Yeah, exactly.
well, back up a second. Can you share with us the secret sauce? I mean, how do you make this? Or what can you tell us without telling us too much?
At a high level, our products are made out of the bioplastics are more of a plant-based material, and so more like a starchy type
Mhm.
material. The products that look like our takeout containers, that can be made out of any kind of fibrous material. It can be, wood pulp. It can be, I know some folks are trying to do it out of seaweed. Some other people are using kind of sugarcane stock. So it's just like, think of making paper, right? You create
Mhm.
a pulp, then you form it. So, but all of our products, all of our base materials are naturally occurring for the most part.
And how long does it take them to biodegrade after we throw them away?
It depends on the environment. There's a lot of factors in that, but we generally say 3 to 6 months. I've done some side experiments and put our bags just in the soil or our fiber containers or cups, and it literally disappears in about 2 months. The thicker products like cutlery, like
Mhm.
forks and the like, that takes a little bit, that takes more on the 6 month side. And that's just naturally occurring. Obviously, if you're industrially composting or you use biodigesters, then it accelerates it, quite a bit.
Fascinating stuff. All right. Last line of questioning here. Always interested to find out from entrepreneurs like yourself, what if you think the disciplines that you gained from your time in the Navy, in the military, how's that impacted the way you do business? How's that affected you as an entrepreneur?
I think, one of the dealing with lack of sleep certainly helps. If you're
Okay.
if you're on the Army or like you or Navy, if you're deployed, you work on a couple hours of sleep. You learn how to fall asleep fast, and you just learn how to operate and basically sleep deprived as long as you can. That same thing works on the entrepreneurial side. Sometimes you have a lot going on, and if you need something done, you can't turn to someone to get it done. You have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, okay, buck up and get it done. So certainly that, working with different types of people, I had certainly, as an officer, but as my senior enlisted were all great. All the enlisted crew I had were great, but they all came from different parts of the country, different socioeconomic classes, and just dealing with them helped on the business side. And then you layer on what I saw internationally in the travels. It just, that time in the military just gave me a really good perspective on different priorities, different socioeconomic statuses, what's important to people, what's important to countries. And that was very, very valuable. I still use it today.
What do you think is the single biggest problem entrepreneurs face? I mean, you've done this, maybe a dozen times. So, there's one thing you got to get right.
I would say talk to your customers and develop a product that they need. Product market fit. I mean, there's all the different buzzwords out there, but so many times people have a great idea and they think it's a great idea, but they forget to talk to the end clients that are going to buy it. And so you need that feedback on what it looks like, the function, the price points, go to market. And then they just don't develop what the market needs.
Got it.
That's probably what I've seen the most.
One last question, and then we'll talk about how people get in touch with you. What's next for Terravive? What does the next 6 months look like?
The next 6 months, we're rolling out. We have quite a few contracts coming online domestically, and those are going to keep us very, very busy. We've been traveling before Christmas. We were traveling for about 2 months straight, and we just started another 2-month effort, just visiting clients. So that's rolling out across the US, continuing to build out our manufacturing infrastructure. And then we're also opening up about 8 different warehouses overseas.
Wow.
So yeah, so we're clients are asking us to go overseas with them. So we'll be doing that.
Most precious commodity is time, isn't it? Okay. Hey, we've been listening to Joe Swider, who's with Terravive. Joe, how do people follow, get in touch with Terravive and follow what you guys are doing?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Bob. You could either email me or you can follow us on LinkedIn, on the other social media networks. We're very busy on LinkedIn. We have a new media guy, and so we put some really interesting content up there. We have a really good one today, by the way.
Okay.
So you
I'll
can
be going
certainly
to
follow
look.
us on LinkedIn. You can even see how well I dance a couple of times, or just send me an email at joe@terravive.com, and I'd be happy to chat with anyone.
Okay, well, we're on the landing page. We're gonna put links to all of your social media, ways to get in touch with Terravive. Hey, you've been listening to the mission-oriented podcast on the VeteranCrowd Network. Again, my guest has been Joe Swider. Joe, thanks so much. Give a shout out to the class of 1988 from VMI. I like to throw my Navy friends a big Bravo Zulu from the Army. Thanks for being our guest today.
Okay, Bob. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you having me.
Okay, folks, that's a wrap.